Hey all, welcome back to Sim Race's Journey. This week we're going to review our first multiplayer race. Yep, we actually did one. Got all the way through it. Just to recap the first attempt, it was at Imola. It was I'd practiced and anyhow, practice went awful once we actually got to the race. Qualifying was a disaster. We got on the track, and before we even really started to roll on the grid there, I was just zapped back into the pits. My controls were locked for a minute and a half. It just didn't go well at all. So we now refer to that as the Imola debacle. But we thought we'd take another shot at it at Hungaroring this time. Racing on the Park for May server. Great bunch of people. Again, I mean, great the first time. I had a lot of problems and issues, and it was pretty klutzy behind the wheel. Great guys this time. But yeah, there's a link to our recap of the first attempt at a multiplayer race down below, so check that out if you want to. But this time was way different. I mean, we completed all 45 minutes of Hungaroring. We completed the qualifying without any incidents, practice without any incidents. It was also very different in that there were only 3 cars this time. Last time, one of the things that got me flustered was watching the grid go from, I think there was 4 of us, to 5, to 10, to 15. And by the time we were done, it was a full grid of 20 people, which was very intimidating the first time out. So this time it was 3 cars, which was a little under intimidating. I was hoping for a few more, but you know, I'm getting ahead of myself here. As far as prep went, did a lot of practice solo, worked through 3 setups, used a baseline setup, which is one that I have used pretty much every track I go to. It seems pretty reliable and sort of a general purpose setup. So I used that as my starting point, just to get some times down and get a feel for the track and things like that. Then I switched to a second one, which was I bought from a crew online, set the car up according to that, and improved my time maybe a second with that setup, but it didn't feel quite right. It was a little bit twitchy. So we made some tweaks to it. So I finally wound up on a third setup that was much more to my liking. We adjusted again the aero a little bit of work on the ride height, spring rates this time as well, and anti-roll bars. We worked on those as well to get them dialed in, to get the car to have the feel that I'm used to and that worked best for me. And so from the beginning, the baseline setup through to where we settled it, we cut about 4 seconds out of what we were running and got a very consistent car that we could run real steady and not be all over the map with it. But so we did a lot of practice solo. We ran some AI races. A couple of things we did with those. One was just to get a feel for driving at that track in with a bunch of other cars, which as it turns out we didn't need because there were 3 of us. And also to adjust the AI. What we did, we found a little trick. I knew about what a fast driver would run at Hungaroring. So we would do a qualifying at a race, set the AI at a certain point, see what the AI best cars were running. If it wasn't quite as fast as they should have been, we'd crank the AI a little bit more, and get it up to where the first 3 or 4 or 5 cars are running pretty fast. And that would be the AI that we would race against. And that's what we did then. We went out and we did a 45-minute, which is what the multiplayer was going to be. We did a 45-minute AI race. Went well. Discovered something about my setup, and I think this is maybe one of my learning points, takeaways from this. Always do a full race with your setup. The setup I had was great for qualifying, where I'd settled it, but my tires were starting to overheat as I got into the race a little bit. So we opened up the brake ducts, a click each, front and rear, and we also dropped the air pressure about 0.2 of a pound. So those were our adjustments for that. And actually, out of this, I wound up with a qualifying setup and a race setup. And there's more of that story, as we'll talk about here in a couple. Okay, so we're on the grid. The drive option's not available to me. It's a little bit concerning. I'm, shall we say, off pace by about 7.5 seconds. But, you know, we'll see. About a minute to the start of the race. I hope the battery makes it. I'm dubious on that. And if you look up in the upper left corner of the screen, drive is gray. And I don't know if that's a bad omen or not. I hope not, after last debacle.
Seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. Oh, drive. My steering wheel is still messed up, Donna.
Going double file.
There, now my steering works. That was awkward.
Green light, go, go, go.
We're racing. There's only 3 of us tonight. make a pit stop and rectify a huge boo-boo. Rookie mistake. I forgot to change my fuel load in my setup. Well, folks, that was stupid. In the heat of the moment, I forgot to put enough fuel in the car and go to my racing setup. So, again, the Department of Lessons Learned. Maybe we should just call this the Lessons Learned series. We'll sit here for another 50 seconds. 53. Track again. And a huge contrast with last week. We have a field of 3. Or 2 weeks ago we had a field of 20, which is off-putting, but 3 doesn't seem like many. Competition coming up behind me.
Faster car coming up behind you.
I got intimidated off the track. Clear to rejoin. That'll definitely make the low lights real. folks, that was the first multiplayer race. Like I say, I was intimidated by 20 cars. 3 was not very many at all. One of these will go together right, and we'll have something a little bit more interesting to show you. But at least we'll put together a highlights and lowlights reel. Every time I'd see that other car up in front of me, kind of get close, I'd clench and brake too late. But we at least made it through qualifying, practice, completed a race, and that was that. All in all, I think it went okay. I had a good chunk of the race where I was pretty consistent. I ran times reasonably close to my what I've run before, and that made me happy. But yeah. Well, that was our first multiplayer race. We completed it. It's kind of anticlimactic. I'd gotten so tense in the first time we tried it, and it had so many problems with it. This one went remarkably smooth, give or take a little thing here and there, like forgetting to put enough fuel in the car, things like that. But it still was a little bit anticlimactic, only 3 cars on the track, which was kind of a disappointment. Like I said, didn't want 20, but a few more than 3 would have been fun. A lot of lessons learned. I think that's going to be the theme of a lot of these multiplayer races. And as we run them, we'll put them out to you guys. We'll pass along what we learn along the way. But setups are crucial. Like I'd said, we went through 4 to get to the race setup, and just tweaking little things. And I just recommend that you all try that too. Is just tweak little things here and there on ACC in the setups. Your aero, your spring rates, your ride height, your brake ducts, your sway bars, and your even your preload and your differential. All those things come into play on understeer and oversteer, things like that. And what you really are going for is a setup that is 1, fast, and 2, you're comfortable with. Because if you're not comfortable with it, if it's a little bit squirrely, some of the time, that's not going to be a good one. 45 minutes of a squirrely car or something like that is not going to be a good way to go. It was our first time we had a qualifying and a racing setup. And that's what I forgot to do, is switch from the qualifying to the race setup, which forced me to have to make a pit stop too early. And, the rest is history. So a big help for setups is the ACC Beginner Setup Guide. There's a new version 2.0 that's out right now. That's been very, very helpful. And down below, you'll find a link to that. It's just some real good basic information as to how things interact, things like that, how spring rates, increasing or decreasing them, what effect that will have in your handling. So I think that is a really, really useful thing. And like I said, that link is below. Starts were confusing at first. We learned about starts. It's kind of the department of things no one tells you. Your controls are locked for about a minute and a half. You can't start the car. You can't put it in gear. Drive is disabled. And then all of a sudden at the 30-second mark, you can start the car. Drive is enabled, and things like that. And then following the car in front of you. My steering wheel, the reason I sort of took off on a diagonal is my steering wheel had been locked. It was sort of pointing that way. So as soon as the car started to go, that's the way we went. But now we know how that works. And another thing I have to learn, and it showed up at the end of the race when the guy slowed down to make it a race at the end, I pushed too hard. When I can see him in my sights, and I braked too late, didn't hit my turn-in points right, my apex was right. I have to back it down a little bit and not be so anxious to get ahead of him or catch up to him. But yeah, I mean, Park for May is an awesome server. I highly recommend it. All the people there have been very, very friendly. Like I said, there was just 3 of us. But we sort of talked afterwards over the next day or 2 in the Discord chat area. So that was great. And all in all, our first multiplayer race that we actually completed was really cool. We really enjoyed it, learned a lot, great experience, and I can't wait to do it again. I told my wife the next day, I said, it's addicting. That's all there is to it. It was just like a buzz, a high you get from it. And this is from the guy who finished last place, drove most of the race by myself, but it's really cool to do this with other people. So that's about it. Next time we race, we will record it and put something together for y'all to take a look at. Hopefully there'll be more cars. Hopefully I'll be more competitive, but we'll let you know when that's coming. And as always, down below are the links to our sim racing gear and all our video gear. And we'll also have the link down there to the ACC Beginner Setup Guide version 2.0. Highly recommend it. And anything that we link is something that we trust and believe in, and we would never do it just because. It's something that we really are putting our weight behind. And if you are getting some good content out of this, some useful stuff, please like and subscribe down below. And we'll see you next time on Sim Racer's Journey.